Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this webinar on the principles of using performance, finance and risk information together to inform good decision making, scrutiny and all-round good practice in our local authorities. I'm joined by some really expert speakers here today. And we're looking forward to a really good session. My role here at the LGA, Local Government Association, is to lead on our finance and governance improvement programmes. And if I can just ask our other speakers today to briefly introduce themselves as well. Councillor McEwen, are you there, please? Would you like to come on screen just to introduce yourself?
Good morning all, I'm Councillor Anthony McEwen, I'm the leader of High Peak Borough Council and look forward to hearing from the other speakers.
Lovely, thank you. And Nancy Clarkson.
Hello everyone, I'm Nancy Clarkson, I'm Head of Intelligence at Wirral Council. Looking forward to the event today, thanks.
Thank you. And Nick Byram.
Hi, good morning everyone. My name's Nick Byram. I'm Strategic Performance Manager at Westminster City Council and looking forward to the session today.
Thank you very much, Nick. Appreciate everybody being here. I'm also being supported today by my colleagues Kate Cooper and Naomi Lucas. They'll be helping us to keep track of all the questions that are being asked, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. So what I'm going to do now is to just share some slides that will take us through today's presentation, and we'll see you on the other side for some questions as well, but just hopefully that is appearing on your screens. So just moving into a little bit about what to expect today. So just first of all, moving my screen on one, hopefully. There we go. So just a reminder, just some of the housekeeping really. If you're struggling with your connection, it's always a bit of a challenge with Wi-Fi. It can help if you can close your other applications. The key thing I would say is we do hope that people will ask lots of questions today. We have got the Q&A function open. So if you've got any questions, do pop them there. That also gives you the chance to look at what other questions people are asking and upvote them so that they get to the top and we can make sure that we answer them. So do please use that functionality. We're also using live captions so that the session is fully accessible, and you can enable those if you want to by going to the More tab in Teams and then followed by Language and Speech, and then you can click on Show Live Captions. We will, I should have said, be looking out for any questions we can answer on the way, but we'll return to any that are outstanding at the end. And if there are so many questions we can't get through them today, we will also take them away and we'll absolutely make sure that we continue to use those to inform our wider support offers, which we'll talk a bit more about at the end of the session. Today's slides will be available on the LGA website at the end, and we will share them after the session as well. We are also recording just the presentations part of this masterclass. That is so that it's there as part of our suite of tools and resources and recordings that we have as part of our performance management improvement programme. And there'll be a link to where you can find more information about that at the end of the session. So what we're going to be covering today, we've developed some new guidance on how to make the best use of financial performance and risk information to inform decision making, and ultimately this is about achieving better outcomes for residents and businesses. And today we'll talk you through that guidance at high level and get some real world examples of how councils are using performance, finance and risk information together and the benefits that they get from that approach. Some of what we might be saying today might feel a bit like common sense, but sometimes unless you notice these things, they don't always get prioritised and valued. So hopefully this will encourage you to take a fresh look at this topic. And fundamentally, I think it's maybe worth just taking a moment to think about why this matters. There are very close connections and interdependencies between finance performance and risk. So, for example, an authority that is performing well but is financially unsustainable is unlikely to continue to be performing well for a long time and will be building up other risks. But poorly managed risks may lead to increased costs or poor performance, including reputational damage in the longer term. And so it's really important that decisions that balance all these three elements, consider that all together, and they will be more robust as a result. This isn't a process or an end has an end in its own right. The focus is on how does this achieve good outcomes for residents, and better decisions will achieve better outcomes. It's more evidence-based decisions will enable you to take the right actions at the right time, to take more targeted actions and really address areas for improvement. And I've mentioned culture on this slide. It's always about culture. So is your council a place where people are encouraged to look for opportunities to learn and continually improve? If so, people are more likely to flag current or potential issues ahead of time so that they can be addressed before things get too serious. Whereas a culture where blame leads to issues being hidden or risks growing until it's too late, that's really, a danger sign and a cause for concern. Excuse me. And I'd also just like to flag the importance of scrutiny and audit committees as part of the whole balance of the authority's performance and governance framework. They provide crucial checks and balances and help to keep the authority safe. So it's crucial that both scrutiny and audit have an understanding of the areas of high risk or high spend, and that'll help to inform areas for scrutiny to deep dive into, to inform reviews of performance or policy development, and then also for audit to check that the effectiveness of risk management is really working correctly, particularly when resources for this can be constrained. So we're now going to look at what this means in practice, and think about some really detailed thinking about what can you do in your local authorities. I guess the first thing to think about is, well, where do you look for this information? There is actually a lot of it, but where to be focusing? Clearly, every local authority will do regular reporting on performance and finance, budget monitoring, and will have a corporate risk register. Financial monitoring reports won't only look at the revenue budget, but also the capital programme, and if you have one, the housing revenue account. Those are all part of the picture of how well the authority is performing and where the risks are. Are all the aspects of the council's finances performing equally strongly? And in combined and strategic authorities, the capital programme will have even more importance than perhaps in other local authorities. The Section 25 report is also a really important part of the picture. So that is a key report written by the Chief Financial Officer at the time of budget setting as part of the report to full council. They're setting out their assessment of the robustness of the council's reserves, and that informs the preparation of the budget, but it's also a key consideration about how much risk can the council bear. Of course, the external auditor is going to be reporting regularly with their findings on value for money, and that will likely comment on how well the council is managing all of these aspects. And of course, there are external inspection reports by people like the Care Quality Commission, Ofsted, and the Regulator for Social Housing. They'll focus particularly on performance, but they will want to see how well the authority is managing its risk and has it got the resources needed to achieve that level of performance. And the annual governance statement is a really important part of capturing the result of a review of the effectiveness of the council's governance, should be happening every year, and should include an action plan for how the authority is addressing any areas for improvement and progress in addressing those. Benchmarking of the council's performance is crucial. You need to find relevant comparators, and LGA Inform, which we'll give links for, is the way to find those comparators. And it also includes, through VFM reports, comparisons of spend, so against different service areas. So you can see how you do compare against people who are like you. And you can see how they vary by performance of spend as well. Turning to some practical tips. If you're looking at all of the reporting information that I've just shared and points throughout the year, it could lead to one very large document, which might well be difficult to follow. How do you see the wood for the trees? So what can help to make the information more digestible? One approach is to gather information about performance, finance and risk together on the same agenda, but not necessarily in the same report, but make sure that they're all looking at the same time period and that they're gathered through an integrated process, which can help to ensure that you're looking at comparable information gathered by people who have an understanding across all three of those dimensions. So, having it on the agenda for Cabinet or Performance and Resources Committee, so that members can see and understand the connections between the different reports on the agenda. You can also consider looking at a particular slice of information as a deep dive if required. So, for example, scrutiny could do a deep dive into services for children with disabilities and see what's going on there, both in terms of trends and financing and performance. Exception reporting is important so that, for example, members are able to focus on the areas that need most attention rather than getting drowned in the detail. There are tools these days that can help with the display of the information. You'll have heard of Power BI or Tableau. That can bring together information from multiple systems to create a whole system view. I would just warn that there is a risk of getting carried away by this, so try not to make visuals too complex, because just to keep comprehensibility is key. Looking at both finance and risk mitigation information together when you're talking about performance can be really helpful. What are the implications for key performance metrics, for example, and thinking about what are the questions that members are likely to ask. So, for example, a report on reporting quarterly performance could say, this service isn't hitting its performance targets. That's a significant risk to a particular corporate objective. The service currently spends X% more than the average of its comparators, and therefore it is proposed to do whatever to address this. Just demonstrating and bringing it all together to help members to be assured that the right things are being done. But in all cases, the trick is to ensure that reports are appropriately concise, and crucially, it's important for non-technical experts to be able to understand the contents of the report. It's also a challenge, however, to make sure that things are not oversimplified. Thinking about that reporting, it's important that authorities are supported to ensure that their corporate objectives are achieved. Ultimately, this is about delivering those benefits to local residents. And that golden thread that we talk about should connect at service directorate, corporate management and executive member level, so that you can see the same information at appropriate levels connecting through, thinking about the corporate performance, financial and risks to delivery of those objectives. And so a well-functioning system should ensure that the right level of detail is reported at each of those levels and that issues are appropriately escalated So the strategic level understanding of the likelihood, the costs and the risks of meeting or indeed not meeting those corporate objectives. And in many cases, risks can impact on more than one service area or objective. So again, bringing together relevant teams to look at those interdependencies can assist in thinking about the overall picture in a more holistic way, rather than just looking at them on a service by service basis. And it'll really make sure that the corporate plan is deliverable and informs the medium-term financial strategy. And that way you can make sure that any appropriate mitigations are put in place from the outset. A corporate plan must be a living document and subject to relevant regular review to see whether any new risks have emerged that would impact on delivery or on the finances available to support delivering that corporate plan. But it's not only about the big ticket objectives. There is also important to continue the business as usual, BAU, those corporate health indicators and routine finance and risk monitoring. Otherwise, you might miss opportunities to ensure that the authority stays safe and legal and has the capacity to deliver. Just thinking about decision making for a moment here. All decision reports should include consideration of the impact of that decision. And so it's good practice to consider the financial and risk implications of alternative options so that you can really be assured that the strongest option is being recommended. Considering the cumulative impact of decisions is also really important. What impact would this decision have on the authority's financial position when considered alongside all of the other decisions that have been made since the budget was set? And will this decision, when considered alongside all the others, still be consistent with the authority's overall risk appetite and financial strategy? Don't lose sight of the longer term implications, particularly in relation to savings proposals. For example, how long is it safe to take a pause on spending on maintenance without a significant risk of impacting on health and safety or service delivery? And thinking about a consistent understanding across both members and officers of all of those interconnections. It's really important to have a shared view of the truth to inform that decision making. That it is all dynamic and interconnected as well. So when the circumstances change, have the set of assumptions that informed decisions changed as well? And if so, should that decision change or at least be reviewed and brought back to members for reconsideration? There's some key roles as part of this process. Of course, the corporate management team will be looking at all of this information at corporate level, and the directorate and team meetings will look at it at their respective levels, following that golden thread through to make sure that operational attention is focused in the right places. Programme and project boards for major projects and programmes will routinely look at all of these aspects and making sure the right actions are taken and escalating where needed. It's essential that cabinet meetings consider this information routinely so that members have the fullest possible view to inform their decision making. And of course, the same applies in committee system councils where you have a performance of resources committee or the equivalent. This information is important to inform work planning for scrutiny so that you know that scrutiny's activity is focused on the right areas. For audit committee to know that it has that assurance of the effectiveness of the council's internal controls. And the golden triangle is what we talk about when we refer to the regular meetings of the chief executive, the chief finance officer and the monitoring officer. They routinely will be looking at good governance, ensuring that there is good administration of the authority and considering any risk areas. So all of this is very relevant to their work. And as I think I mentioned, the appropriate level of detail is key at each of these areas. Decision-making members and the senior leadership team will be focused on a strategic overview with layers of further detail further down the organisation. I would say a crucial question for each of these bodies to be thinking about, both members and officers, is has this information about performance, finance and risk that we're looking at, has this provided us with sufficient assurance that things are on the right track and are going to stay on track? Or do we need more information or to take action to gain that assurance? And then the frequency with which that information is considered will vary according to the role and the purpose of the meeting. Project and programme boards should be considering it at every meeting. Cabinet meetings should be considering monitoring reports at least quarterly. It's also important not to think that just because you've got lots of reports coming to you regularly, you can be confident about everything. You need to understand what conclusions can't be drawn from the information you're looking at, as well as what it is telling you. For example, there will always be a time lag between the data being produced and the point at which it's being reviewed. And this can become more pronounced when you're looking to benchmark information with comparators. It is still really valuable to do that, looking at your own authority's performance in real time, while other benchmarked information may take longer to become available. It's key to guard against the temptation to explain away older data. Is that view really backed up by other evidence? And confidence in the accuracy of the authority's data is absolutely essential, and the audit committee will need to seek assurance that that data quality is there. So some questions to consider as part of thinking about that. Do you have multiple systems which record and track data across the authority, which might lead to inconsistencies or there not being a single version of the truth? Is there an over-reliance on manual processes which could cause inefficiencies and data quality and version control issues? Are all teams reporting to the required standards of accuracy and frequency? Are you using customer-focused insights, for example, resident survey and results of consultation, to back up what, for example, use data is telling you? And there's a range of supports for councils who'd like to look at how they can improve their data quality and approaches in relation to this. And we'll be sharing some more information about that at the end of today's session. So a little bit more about what we found that we think good looks like. There's something about transparency. So if you've got that regular publication of this information, then you can really demonstrate your authority's commitment to openness and transparency, particularly if it's presented clearly and in a non-technical format. Leadership by the senior leaders in the organisation, both members and officers, championing this approach so that everybody knows that it's important to do this. It's seen as essential, interconnected, and that holistic view is seen as important rather than just looking at things in silos. It is, as I said, all about culture, a space where any issues or dips in performance are seen as opportunities for learning and improvement rather than a trigger for blame. And that's what I mean when I say a high challenge, high support culture. Senior managers should expect to be challenged constructively about their understanding of the data, of the risks, of financial performance, and also what they're doing to address any underperformance or non-delivery. And a learning organisation will also regularly review the effectiveness of this approach. It's also essential that elected members are engaged meaningfully through this process. So, for example, giving them an opportunity to advise on what level of detail and what format of presentation of information works best for them. They can support the selection of the key performance indicators and, as I've said, contribute to deep dives in scrutiny. They will, of course, challenge assumptions about relative risks. It's, as I say, it's important to have that shared understanding of risk. All corporate directors will need to understand the performance, finance and risk issues, not just of their own areas, but across the council overall, and the contribution that they will each make to addressing them. And regular scheduled discussions at corporate management team can really help with this. It's important to have development opportunities for elected members and officers to really ensure that they have the skills necessary to understand the information that's being presented to them and to analyse and interpret that data and consider risks strategically. And of course, the systems, policies and procedures need to support this approach as well. I would say the other point is about the use of external challenge. There are opportunities through things like peer challenges that the LGA can provide, and there will be other activity at regional level to test, is your approach as good as you think it is? Are you using the most recent information? Is it based on current practice? Will also give you an opportunity to get new perspectives on performance and risk. And again, we'll share some examples at the end of other ways in which you can open up your awareness of other practice in other places. That's been a canter through the guidance that we're launching this week, and for which I'll give you the link at the end. It's now time to hear some real world examples from, how does this work in practice, and what matters in councils. And I'm going to invite Councillor McKeown to speak first. I wonder perhaps if I'll stop sharing the slides so that we can all see Councillor McKeown speaking at this point. And I'll invite you to come in there, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you, Heather. So I'm going to talk a little on High Peak's approach to this. Now, the main way we do this is we do a quarterly combined finance, performance and procurement report that goes initially to our corporate select committee for scrutiny, and then it follows on to the executive. In terms of what that report contains, it contains sort of a cover report, which has sort of a summary of the information that's within it, split into finance, looking at sort of a couple of headlines on finance that are chosen sort of by officers and by our portfolio holder. So that includes, in the most recent one, performance against budget, how our efficiency program's running, any issues around HRA, any issues on capital, either capital program for HRA or capital program in general, anything around treasury management, and any issues around revenue. So these are just the headlines. Then for procurement, we have how many procurement activities have taken place during that quarter. We have an alliance with Staff Jamorans, so it's a shared management, shared services, shared staff. So it includes a split on what that procurement was, so whether it was procurement for either High Peak, Staff Jamorans, or joint. And then just some general performance information, again in headline details. And then finally, it has a performance section, again looking, and again just in the cover report, it just contains any headlines or issues that we need to flag up. Then following on from that, there's detailed appendices for each of the sessions. So within the finance one, it again goes into further detail on revenue, efficiencies. We have 3 council-owned companies, so it includes both information on how they're financially doing, any performance issues, or just any other general issues that we need to be aware of in terms of those council-owned companies. We currently have a shopping centre, which we got through Future High Street funding, which we're in the process of redeveloping. So it includes current headlines on that. Then details on HRA on the revenue side. Then a section on capital, both general fund and HRA. Then any issues on treasury management, then details around revenue. We then move on to the procurement section. It has some general reminders on essentially what the point of our procurement service is. It then details that quarter's performance. We also have a procurement plan for the year, and we include details on how we're performing based on that forward plan. We have a couple of details on if there's been any high level or any major procurement work done. Details again on performance of procurement. And then there's annexes then on the actual procurement that we've done, which includes details around each of the individual exercises, so title, description, service area, procedure that we did, whether it was on a framework or done as an individual exercise, who the winner was, the terms and the value of that contract, and then again that's split for exercises done on behalf of each of the individual councils or if it's done as a joint measure. They then have a separate section on performance. It includes information on, starts off with a dashboard of overall performance with any particular highlights. And that includes with it as well an overview of customer service feedback, again, just at more high level. And then it breaks it down based on our corporate plan and the particular aims within the corporate plan. And each one of the aims is reviewed. Any targets where they're off track or not performing as well. Any particular action highlights. So if we've had any successes in those particular performance measures, or there's any concerns. It has a link through then to the council's intranet for sort of further details or a full review of that service. And then for any that are off track, it then includes details on why they're off track and what the plan is in terms of putting them back together. And then the final section is on customer feedback and complaints. We have a split, including details around general issue complaints, but also housing complaints, and particularly sort of the work that we're doing to make sure that we're meeting the RSH, the regulated social housing standards, and particular tenancy satisfaction measures. We then have summary details of any stage 2 complaints, so they're complaints that have gone through an initial process and either haven't been resolved or there's still issues with them. So they then go to the heads of service for a more detailed response. And this is a summary of those in terms of what the issue was, whether it's been hopefully resolved, or any particular measures that we needed to resolve that. There's then a performance section around complaints and customer input. Details then of any that have gone to any of the ombudsman and where they are within that process, and the responses that we've had from the ombudsman. And then finally, a summary graph sort of across the complaints and customer feedback section, just showing sort of peaks and troughs and the overall performance in terms of complaints that are coming for each of the service areas, so we have a rough idea. And we also then include a total for comments, complaints and issues that have been raised by the local MP. We're looking for our area, but we just have the one MP. So it's easy enough for us to sort of include that summary. And essentially having that information combined to us, we've been going through the corporate sort of select committee and scrutiny process first. When it then goes on to the executive, we're able to sort of look at any particular issues that have been highlighted as part of the report we put together. But we're also able to make sure that we're using any of the issues that have been raised by members from the scrutiny process to make sure they're getting either responded to or they've been redirected accordingly once they come into the executive as the report goes through the sort of final sign-off. With some of the issues, particularly with our council-owned companies, because of the nature of sort of some of the work they do, they feed back through to a number of different committees in terms of the particular responsibilities that are carrying out for us. So having one place where that overview comes in makes sure that we can keep sort of the overall performance sort of under review, but also on the particular issues or challenges that are coming up and make sure they're getting dealt with accordingly. We also have any major schemes and the sort of shopping centre feedback is one particular one in terms of how well we're sort of progressing on that. And if there are any issues that are going to make sort of moving on to the next stage of that particular big project that we're aware of, and then we're doing information on that. And then in terms of sort of that final process of what happens with all the information that's been collected after that, we then sort of use that to help set up the forward plan in terms of what our scrutiny committees are looking at, but also use any of that if there's any particular issues that need to get fed through to our audit committee in terms of looking at sort of any risk issues, governance issues, etc., so that we can raise them appropriately, or if there's concerns sort of coming through from our external auditors as to any issues that we need to look at. And that helps us to sort of make sure that we have a good overall picture in terms of what we're doing financially, what we're doing performance-wise, and what we're doing particularly, and it's going important, particularly on the housing side, making sure that we're dealing with those complaints before they become a major issue. Hopefully, although it's a bit of a challenge at the moment, particularly as the housing regulator is a sort of a little bit of a flexible beast at the moment, in a sense, in terms of sort of getting used to them. But it's around making sure that we're sort of getting those issues flagged up early on and making sure that we've got a good process to be able to deal with them. And that's essentially sort of the process that we use within the High Court to try and make sure that we're keeping on track of where we're going with all of these issues, but also making sure that it's linked through to what we're doing as part of our borough plan to make sure that we get, the things that we're hoping to be able to achieve over time will be achieved. And particularly as we're moving on to dealing with local government reorganisation issues, we'll redevelop this again a little bit to make sure that the focus includes dealing with local government reorganisation issues that we're going to have to start working through that system once we get a final decision from government. And that's more or less it. Thanks.
That's great. Thank you so much, Councillor McKeown. Really, really grateful. Brilliant to hear both your leadership and ownership of it from a senior member perspective, and clearly how much it matters to you. I'm really struck by the focus you also place on procurement, because that is a key route, obviously, to the achievement of the objectives, and you need to make sure that's an important part of the understanding about performance and finance and risk. And you've also obviously got a very clear focus on customer and resident view and what matters, and that's a very important part to your of your performance understanding as well. So yeah, there's so much there, and really grateful for that. And I'm sure people may want to ask questions specifically from the member perspective when we get to the Q&A at the end. Just a reminder, do encourage people, if you want to pop any questions in the Q&A, either specifically for Councillor McKeown or any of our other speakers, or more generally, and I'll ask for people's reflections on that as well. I'll now go back to sharing our slides. If I can just find my slide set. There we go. Okay, and we're going to move on to Nancy to talk us through your approach at Wirral, if that's okay, Nancy.
That's great. Thanks, Heather. And it's great to be here today to speak about the development and use of our operational performance, governance and assurance model. Next slide, please. So just to start, we initiated the work with a really clear remit, championed by our former chief executive. He was really aware that there was underperformance in the council, and he wanted key operational performance information to be brought together and become really accessible for everybody. He wanted the whole council involved, and what we did was we established an operational performance group with all directorates being in that group, along with key corporate services such as finance, HR, audit and risk. We had a really clear role to collectively work to identify and address underperformance, and we also utilise deep dives as required. But a key thing about this group is it is very much about sharing best practice, collectively learning and improving. He also wanted reporting back to the senior leadership team so that he personally and other directors could monitor improvement. And if necessary, he could hold directorates to account. And we set up this as part of a governance model, which is shown here in this image. Just to note, we did start the rollout of this approach with councillors once we'd embedded it within the officer core, and we started that with the ex-leader of the council. But as of last year, we had a big leadership change, so we're just recalibrating the next phase for this piece of work. Next slide, please. So the way we approached it, we developed a departmental management team insight app. We used a wide range of council data sets from across the council, and the key thing was we co-produced the app with development and from all directorates to really optimize data sources and also look wherever possible to automate the tool. So the app itself has a range of corporate reporting all in one place. You can see the menu of it on the right. So that's a header for each section within the app. And underneath those headers, we have approximately 70 individual reports within the app, which we do continuously evolve as required. It integrates finance, including performance, including procurement, risk and performance in a key range of the corporate health measures. So, for example, for finance, we have revenue, savings and capital, along with procurement and alongside the corporate and individual directorate risk registers within there. We utilise the Power BI for this, which allows obviously a lot of interactivity, ability to filter, to view different director results, time periods and data sets, and a really strong use of visuals within the reports. As we can rapidly drill down through the pack, it's very easy to do that just by exception and identify key issues with just a few clicks, and each is set up with the ability to interrogate. For example, we have an audit pack in here that has 3 levels of reporting, a very high level summary, so you can view exactly where the issues are. You can drill through just on the exception issues, filter the audit detail by directorate or service or risk level, and also look at overdue recommendations. And then you can also drill through to the 3rd layer where you can actually view the detail of each of the recommendations. It's highly accessible to all directorate management teams, and the concept is, of course, that they will review the information themselves and look at underperformance in their monthly performance management DMTs. And we have a lead from each of those DMTs on our operational performance group. And at OPG, we triangulate the evidence. So we get feedback from the DMTs, we look at the insight in the app, and then where necessary, we implement deep dives to really drill through and have a look at key areas that we want further information about. Next slide, please. So we've done a range of deep dives, including audits, business continuity, subject access requests, HR casework. But what I've done here is I've just highlighted 2 deep dives that we've carried out. One of them, freedom of information. We have a really high number of FOI requests, much higher than our neighbouring councils. And we had quite low compliance within the council of attaining that sort of 85% rate that we're aiming for. So we carried out with the information governance team in the council a deep dive in this area. We engaged with every directorate. We also spoke with the ICO. We looked at processes across the organisation and honed in on the areas with low performance. As a result of the deep dive, we had changes to processes, a new ICT solution, improved capacity in specific key areas, and the result has been a really good improved performance across the council in response rates. The second deep dive I've flagged up is our MP inquiries. Obviously very high profile inquiries that can also go to the chief exec. So, and we have quite a strict protocol. It's 10-day response rate for MP inquiries. And it was flagged through the app that a couple of our directorates, neighbourhood services and regeneral place, who receive over 60% of all of these, they only were able to answer 51% of these inquiries within the deadline. So we triggered a specific routine for this work through a pilot in neighbourhood services, where we had an investigation and an extra offer of support in key areas where inquiries weren't being completed. And this was a big process change, real increased focus on accountability. It really did trigger rapid improvement and cultural change in key areas. And the approach was shared through OPG to use in other targeted areas as well. I'm happy to report last month's neighbourhoods had 100% hit that target. So it does show the impact of these running these deep dives in the most productive way. Next slide, please. So in terms of sharing the learning and developing a tool like this with you today, key things that I'd like to highlight are very important to get that sponsorship. We were lucky enough, our chief executive was really determined to make significant change, and that got the whole organisation to buy into the approach. It did take obviously quite a bit of time and energy building that trust and effective relationships, but we've built a really strong operational performance group, and that drives change across the whole organisation. And a key thing is we are not looking to blame, we are just looking to understand better and make significant improvements. We've got the clear governance to enable escalation where necessary, and that also allows us to get actions that are required to be quickly signed off and delivered. We took a lot of time to co-create these reports. That was really helpful. It meant messages that we were pulling out were really meaningful. It builds trust with all the data owners in the organisation. And another key element of that work is that as we put really skilled data analysts to talk to people, a lot of skills were shared. So the approach also really improves data quality, how people record in systems, and also a lot of accuracy in the systems. So that has really improved our reporting insight, and has also helped us with the work we're doing on getting one single source of truth that is sucked out and put into all reports, whether or not this operational performance pack, but also into committee reports. We use the tool Power BI. Obviously, you can use the tools you've got available, but it really does give that interactive approach, easy access for the right people, really speed of use, and the visibility really means that things can be searched really simply, and issues should be able to be dealt with rapidly because you can drill through to the level of data you need to review it. We did spend a lot of time as well at the beginning optimizing all the data flows, looking at automation and pipeline design for the data. So we currently, on a monthly basis, we've only got 4 hours of analyst time checking in on this and producing this monthly pack, which for over sort of 70 reports is really great. So that has been hugely positive things as well in terms of efficiencies for the council. I would highly recommend deep dives because the key thing that's also dug out is also identifying cultural issues in certain areas of the council. And it's very much the way we've approached it is continuous development. We work and engage with everybody, and it's very much shared learning and driving performance improvement. Next slide, please. And this is just further information about our tool if you're interested. Thank you very much.
Being able to come back in at the end, I was really struck by what you said about culture in the organisation and how that was as much a focus for you. It's a clearly important part of it. It's not just the data of it, it's what does this tell us about the culture of the organisation, and also about the importance of skills to be able to really make the most of this information and the approach. So yeah, those are certainly a couple of points that I will take away from this thought process and in your presentation. Thank you so much. So now, shall we move on to Nick Byram from Westminster City Council? Over to you, Nick.
Thank you very much. Hi again, everyone. Really enjoyed that, Nancy. Thanks for that, taking us through your slides. I'll just wait for the slide to tick over, is it? There we go. Foolishly, I've animated my slides, which probably was a mistake. So whoever's doing the clicking, if you do your best to kind of keep pace with me, that'd be great. So what I wanted to talk about was the fact that at Westminster, what we've done is take a strategic approach to our corporate performance management arrangements, and we do have a corporate performance strategy. That's an internal strategy. It's not a kind of, what we're saying to residents about how we're going to manage or share performance of the organization. It is very much a tool to help us really deliver a step change in how we look at our performance management arrangements. So our vision there is that we wanted to be more effective and efficient as a function, and that we wanted to add value and give senior leaders better quality insights. So just want to spend a few minutes talking about what we've been up to. So three key domains within our strategy. The first one there, looking at the architecture, the data architecture of how you are storing, collecting, meshing together data is really important. So a couple of years ago, we had a kind of siloed data management, bits and bobs in Excel everywhere. We didn't have good metadata to kind of enable us to glue data sets together. We've very much moved towards having an integrated and highly structured data set. And making use of APIs, LG Inform Plus, we plug into, and looking what more we can do with our internal data sets as part of the data lake, data repository environment. And why is that important? The architecture there, if your intention is to provide better quality insights by linking finance information with performance information, with risk information, the data spider web just becomes more complicated, and having it organized is really important. We also felt as well that end user experience of your visualizations, we too, as Nancy just mentioned, we use Power BI. We've got the MS stack, as I'm sure most of you probably have. People are not that patient when it comes to digital products. When you click on a dashboard, you want it to load in a couple of seconds. Otherwise, nowadays, I guess we all have a little bit of digital impatience where after a few seconds, if it hasn't refreshed, maybe it's not working, and that is something that the architecture can help drive. On the next row there, the automation side, those of you who work or manage corporate performance functions or functions within service directorates will know that probably the human resources you've got to play with these days is not as much as it was in the old days, when we were highly resourced, when audit commission days, and for those of you who remember all of that. But what we wanted to do was move away from the manual stuff, the kind of heavy lifting that requires a lot of officer time, manipulation of spreadsheets, sending templates out, all of that. Moving towards a situation where we're partially or fully automating some of those processes so that we're gathering data without disturbing officers around the council, that we're leaning on AI, generally Copilot in our case, to help summarize information, rather than having officers trawling through long lists of stuff, made sense to us. And that is really important if you're looking to what's the finance information, the performance information, the risk information, and external horizon scanning telling me about what's going on in children's social care or public health or our highways service. You need to lean on the technology to help you not have a high effort process. So then on the final row there, advanced insights being one of our strategic outcomes that we're looking for. We wanted to move away from what I'd call obvious commentary. the old kind of it's gone up, it's gone down kind of commentary. This is due to staff being off or bad weather, whatever. That we wanted to really add insight into our reports, that the corporate voice is there, and that we're telling senior leaders, and I know and members, and we've got many of those on the call today, that telling them stuff that they might not know. I would fully expect an executive director in a service to be well on top of their portfolio, but do they know about how their performance might be impacted by some risks that we're tracking in other areas and such like. Next slide, please. Probably cool to move on. So you might be thinking, well, what do we need a strategy for? Well, you don't. If you've got the buy-in, if everybody knows what's going on and where you're looking to get to, that you don't. Yeah, keep clicking. But yeah, if you do need to knock on some doors to make things happen, it can help. It can share with your stakeholder that you're trying to engage with, what it is you're up to, where you want to get to, and the vision for the future. Also, we have a lot of interest in what we do from internal and external audit functions, and that it's really helpful to kind of show where you are and where you want to get to. You've got the evidence there to show that you're taking value for money analysis seriously and that kind of thing. And on to the second bit of the slide here, as Nancy mentioned previously, you do need cross-council support. We couldn't do any of this without our performance colleagues in our service directorates, and being engaged with them has been really important. I think personally, we couldn't have delivered what we've done without having highly skilled staff in the team. So I can give a shout out to my colleague, Will Jones, who is the expert in Westminster corporate performance for this stuff. But rather than bringing in consultants or external people to kind of build stuff for you, I felt it's been a lot more meaningful to have control of that within your own environment. Or if you lean on IT digital functions to kind of enable stuff for you, having really strong relationships with them so that you're not sitting down at the bottom of the pipeline for stuff, that you kind of can make things happen quickly, so that's concludes that slide. Just what that looks like in terms of our capability as a corporate performance function at Westminster. Yeah, click through these and they should pop up magically. So we have been able to integrate our performance risk council plan delivery into integrated dashboards. All of our dashboards are come with embedded benchmarking, so you can now see the council's performance and finance stuff in context. We've developed a value for money model, a lot of that with one eye on the LGOF, or the public sector outcome framework that we're expecting in February. That how are we doing versus what we spend on services compared to others, is something that we're able to now look at and incorporate analysis into our reports. Mentioned already that we've kind of really reduced the amount of manual process in what we do, which then gives me and my colleagues time back to do that add value kind of piece. And having been someone who was relatively AI, that don't impress me much kind of person when it first came out, now recognizing that AI really can help with kind of monitoring and managing various information sets. So we have built a horizon scanning tool which looks at external policy digest emails and all that kind of stuff, and is able to automatically synthesize those into a data set of what's going on across the external environment, which we can then lean on for our reports. So just over to the final slide. Hopefully I haven't run over too much. But just to summarize here, we have an integrated risk and performance board, which is the chief exec led with all the executive directors. It meets quarterly. Our focus as a corporate performance function is really on enhanced exception reporting is what I call it. So we have Power BI embedded within PowerPoint pack, so we're able to really cut down on the number of slides that people look at. We're able to ensure that not only are our services able to tell us what's going on, but that we can add our corporate insight alongside that and have a focused discussion around areas of underperformance. And our insights are based on a growing list of things that we look at. So, benchmarking our change portfolios, VFM expenditure, and we really looking to kind of accelerate that in the future, using technology to have that happen. And then just finally, the relationships. What we've done is that we have a pre-meet with all of the executive directors individually before the board. Now that is extra time and effort, but we feel strongly that that's really been paying off. So we're able to go through the emerging issues before we have a board meeting, rather than hitting people cold with, oh, we're really concerned about this area, that we can work through that, make sure that everybody's on the same page and understand any of the nuances in service delivery within the corporate narrative. It's really helped improve that kind of two-way, that we're together on this rather than them and us feeling in terms of our performance management. And we feel that that's something that we'd like to continue in the future, because it's really showing a positive performance management culture. So that's all from me. Slides and contact details should be available. Hand back to you, Heather.
Thank you so much, Nick. That's great. Really appreciate that. And I think a couple of things that really struck me from what you said, your point about moving away from the obvious commentary, what wouldn't readers otherwise know, that again, that really comes to the kind of the value added element that you talked about. And that the pre-meet with directors and thinking about the approach there is another really good example of that. So again, just thinking about how to make the most of all this really rich information that you've got is really important point. Thank you so much for that. Jane, if you're kindly sharing the slides for me, there's just so that people are aware, there's in the slide set that you'll get, there is also there's some links to some other case studies that we have. For example, in East Sussex, as an example of a different kind of council where they talk about their business planning process, which includes risk, which is a really established process they've got. So I would do a plug for their case study, which you'll have the list for the link for as well. And then we've also got some other case studies coming through from Cheshire West and Chester. You'll see the Wirral one, but we are developing more case studies as we go. Thank you, Jane, for cycling through the questions. But I think as we get there, we'll probably just to flag to people that we have got that link in our slide set, that you'll be able to follow up those further case studies. Exactly that, just reached there. So what you've got here, first of all, is the link to the new guidance, which goes into more detail about what we've been talking about today. You can see that online on our website. And then if we go to the next slide, there is also much more support available. So the data and performance management webinars that Kate's team lead on and that we'll add to here, the improvement support programs around making better use of data, tools and guidance related to risk management and performance management more generally. A little bit more around the role of audit committees and the questions that audit committees would be, be good to focus on as well. So, and then if we move to the next one, there are also other resources that other people are producing as well, around financial management, around how to make use of the technology that's available to us. and some useful guidance from the National Audit Office around risk that is quite practical, and a reminder about how to be thinking about risk as part of this work as well. So I will just pause there and invite our speakers to share with us any final reflections that they may have on what they've heard today, or thoughts that they'd like to leave you with. Councillor McEwen, can I bring you in first, please?
Thanks. I think it's a useful talk. I think, we all, in some way, shape, or form, monitor performance. And I think probably one of the bigger challenges coming up, particularly for us, is around, or for those of us that are affected by it, will be around the LGA stuff, and how you can sort of integrate both keeping us on with the business as usual, but also sort of getting us ready for that merging or rearranging of things that we're all going to have to go through, whether we want to or not. But it's something that we're going to have to sort of integrate into those systems as we move forward. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And yeah, understanding risk to enable you to make sure about what you need to be keeping an eye on the BAU, business as usual, while you're doing this, is a really important part of that. Thank you. Nancy, any reflection from you?
Yeah, I think it's been a really interesting session, and some great questions from everyone as well. I think one of the key things is that, link just what you were saying about risk, Heather. Every council has certain areas that are high risk, therefore needs more effort looking into those areas. I think one of the key things from our sort of tool that we've set up, and the learning from that, is it's very much, in order to really impact on those deep-seated issues where there is underperformance, it's very much about really good communication, really good collaboration with people, and that's at all levels in the organisation, including members. And for me, that's the way that you can really start to impact on performance, and also keep moving forward with that continuous improvement approach. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thanks, Nancy. Yeah, it's all about the communications and people, and how people work together, isn't it, always? And Nick?
Yeah, thanks. I echo all of that. I just think it's probably is an exciting time for kind of performance related functions, as it has been in a while. I think, like, with the announcement of the log-off framework, with fair funding review, and what data and tools can do for us now in terms of our information management and support for decision making. I think it's a real exciting time for those of us who are kind of looking to support senior officers and members with good quality information.
Yeah, absolutely. At difficult and challenging times, you really want to be confident about the information you've got to support your decision making during those periods, don't you? Thank you so much. Just the final slide has my contact details if anybody does have any follow-up questions, and I can help in directing to other people who are leading on our improvement programs as well. Thank you so much to our speakers today. Really helpful to hear from you. Brilliant perspectives. Thank you to colleagues who've kept us on track today, including dealing with the technical difficulties. And thank you to everybody for your forbearance while we worked our way through those. But hope you found this helpful, and look forward to seeing you again at an LGA webinar at some time in the future. But enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you very much for your attention. Goodbye.